So we got a nice variety of plants today. All of them have problems of some kind. So I'll be sharing what type of problems each plant has gone through, you know, its experience, what led up to its current problem, and then we're gonna be trying to save them. So I guess what I'm gonna do is probably start with this queen since I'm holding it right now, and try not to stick my elbow in water down here because I dripped it on the table. So this plant came in from Equiflora, an import that I did last month, and I already shared that video with you guys. And this is kind of an update on it. I put it in a cup of water, distilled water, and it has been rooting. And so I'm really glad that it is coming back to life because basically it was on a chonk that had rotted. So I had to remove the rot and the chonk, and basically it was just this little bare nub stem and no roots or anything. But it did have some nodes on there, so I was hoping it would be able to reroot without any problems, and so far so good. It did reroot. As we're going through the problems, I'll also share like the leaf damage, what it looks like and what caused it. So the dried tips you see on the ends there, those are all from dehydration, from not having any roots, so the plant couldn't take up any water for at least like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. It couldn't take up any water, so it was just like suffering, and so it did get those dried tips, and there's a good look at that one too. That leaf has, I'm surprised that has not fallen off yet, but that one has been hanging on for dear life. All right, so what I'm gonna do here is work through each of these problems with you guys. Oops, wait, hold on here. I need one that does not have holes in it. Okay, so we've got a couple different potting options here. We could put it into a pot, a clear pot preferably, so we can watch the roots and kind of monitor them. So I could put it into one of these slotted pots that is frosted so I could see the roots, and we could just put it right into the soil and just hope that it takes off. Or you could get that root system a little stronger first, kind of root it out in a transitional mix or transitional media like perlite or pumice, and have like a little reservoir, so sort of like a little, you know, semi-hydro sort of setup for it. I think I'm gonna root it out further in perlite. So I have 2 cups here. I've got one that Michael actually used a wood burner and burned holes in the bottom of it, just a little plastic cup, and then I have one regular cup. And so I just take this one, we'll fill it with some perlite. I rinsed this perlite earlier, and that way it doesn't have all the fine dust, because I noticed, at least in my experience with potting up plants, I like to rinse the pumice and perlite these days. I didn't used to do that, but after experiencing how it can compact and really turn into like this almost like cement in the pot, and it stifles new root growth. So that's why I make sure I rinse it every time now before I use it in a mix or anything. So I'm just gonna poke, oh, you guys probably can't see, but I'm literally just putting the plant in here and just making sure it's about at the right depth there. Sometimes when you're rooting a plant in water, the roots will start growing upwards. They're looking for more oxygen. So I've got these little roots that are like pointing straight up in the air. I'm just gonna gently guide them, these little fuzzy water roots. I'm gonna guide them downwards. Oh my gosh. You know what I just realized? That leaf that has been trying to die since I got the plant in, that's the one that is putting out the new leaf. That is crazy. Okay, I hope the new leaf can make it. But yeah, I was just looking at that petiole going, wait a second, who does that belong to? Who is the pregnant leaf here? Yeah, that one is one tough mother there. I cannot believe that thing. Seriously, what it's been through. Now I've got a cup with no holes in the bottom, and I'm going to add a little bit of distilled water. Okay, we're just gonna put one like tiny half drop of, there we go, of the Super Thrive in that cup. All right, so I've got about 1 inch of water in the reservoir, and then I'll just slide the perlite cup in there. All right, so we've got the roots up here, and then the water line is down here. So I'm just gonna keep it like that, and I'll just, you know, check every once in a while. If I notice the reservoir is starting to dry up, then I will add a little bit more water in there. Not too much, because you don't want the water reservoir getting up too close to the roots, because then you could cause root rot, and we don't want that. Okay, so that's all we're gonna do for the baby queen. Okay, this next situation I'm working with is a Philodendron fibrosum. It has a beautiful leaf, almost, except it couldn't finish unfurling there, and that edge that it couldn't finish unfurling is all brown and crispy. But the little stem is absolutely gorgeous. If you're able to see that fuzz on there, oh my goodness. That is why I ordered this plant. I ordered it from Ecuagenera, and I think I got this in an import that was back in August. It came in with no roots. Well, I should say that it had a few roots that were all rotted, and so I had to cut all those off. So basically it was just a stick with 2 leaves. The first bigger leaf died off, and then I was left with this that was still completely furled up. It would not unfurl for the longest time, and it would not root for the longest time either. And it was longer before, so that leaf was still furled up, and basically the stem was looking like this. So it was long and it was not rooting. I had it in water for like a month. It did not root. I couldn't figure out what was going on until I started examining the stem, and I was like, oh, all those other nodes, like all the way around them, it's all spent. There's nowhere for that to root. And so I was like, okay, we're gonna have to use the very last node at the very top here and try to get it to root from there. So I cut the stem off and I put that into the water, and sure enough, it started rooting within 2 weeks. So it's got 1-inch roots here that are white, fuzzy, healthy. They look beautiful. And then I've got this wet stick here, and those have axillary buds that I can see that do look alive, and they look like they could grow into a plant. So I'm definitely not throwing that piece away. See, I'm still discovering stuff as I'm working on these plants with you guys. I definitely do not have it all figured out. It's kind of just like, you know, bumbling along, experimenting and trying to figure out stuff on the go. I'm actually gonna drop that back into the water. Just sterilize my nippers here. Those are my fiskers. So there was like a start of an old aerial root there. I'm just gonna snip that off because that's all soft and not viable. Same with on this side. It does have another bud down here, but it's not gonna root down there. So I think actually what I'm gonna do is cut this. Okay, I've got my little cutting board from IKEA that is especially for plants, and I couldn't find my little blade, so I'm just gonna have to use my knife here. I'm just gonna cut it where there's only like 1 inch to the node. So I'm gonna save that part that we just cut off because there is a node with a live bud on there, an axillary bud. So I'm hoping I can regrow both of those wet sticks and hopefully have more little baby fibrosums sometime. This one, I'm just gonna let that callus over just for, you know, while we're working on some other plants, and then I'll come back to it. I just kind of nestled the roots down into my wet perlite, but the cut into the stem is just out there in the open air, so I'm hoping that that will help mitigate the little roots. I don't want the tips of those brand new roots to dry out because that's pretty much like all I've got left on that plant since we're working with the very last node. This is Philodendron esmeraldense, and it came in actually with the same import as the fibrosum. It also had no roots, and it actually had a spot on the stem that was really dark and looked like the stem was rotting. And I was like, ooh, looking underneath it, I was going, I don't know, because there was like almost no place to be able to like save it from that point, that particular like dark spot. It was right on the very underneath side too. So I don't know if that will come up on camera for you guys. So it was just like this dark spot under here, and I was just like, okay, if that rots, I'm not gonna be able to save this plant. So I put it in water, and I just hoped that it would be able to put out some new roots, and it has rooted all over the last little nodes that I had to work with, and this was such a baby plant. Like there was hardly anything to be able to work with here. I'm actually amazed at how well it rooted out, and I'm so grateful that that did not rot under there. I'm glad that dark spot did not spread or turn into rot. So I had to go look for some pots, and I think I'm gonna put it in a terracotta pot because I want to put a totem with it because it looks like it's already ready to start climbing. It's done like this 90-degree angle on the stem here, so it looks like it wants to shoot straight up and start climbing. So one of the things that's really interesting about these Philodendron esmeraldense is that they can be terrestrial, so they've been observed in these 3 different situations. So they can be terrestrial, so growing along the ground. They can be epiphytic, so climbing up trees, you know, up the trunks of trees, up the bark. Or they can be epilithic, which means they can actually attach to stones and rocks. which is really interesting. So I think just knowing that, you know, I'm always trying to look up what is their natural habitat. Like each of these plants, I want to know where do they actually come from? How do they actually grow when they're out there in the wild? And then I try to figure out how to best adapt that to my situation in the house here. Okay, let's get the totem in there. I know this is gonna look like it's wishful thinking, having a little tiny seedling in there with a cocoa totem already, but it'll grow into it. So I'm using an extra light fluffy aroid mix that's closer to an Anthurium mix for this. It's got a lot of pumice in it, so it's very pumice rich. It's got tree fern, horticultural charcoal. We've got worm castings in here, cocoa chips and fiber, plenty of bark. Those little roots are all sticking straight up in the air, so I gotta kind of guide those downward into the soil. Okay, let's give that a shake and just get that soil to settle a little more. So there's nothing to attach to the pole yet, but we have high hopes for it. So I'm gonna take this to the sink now and give that a water. It does have a new, is that a new leaf coming in? I think so. I think we do have a caterpillar down here. So I will keep my eye out on that and let you guys know how this plant does. And especially being in this really chunky mix, I'm just now getting into testing out the tree fern recipes, soil recipes, so soilless mixes with the philodendrons, because I've been using them with the anthuriums. And so far I'm just sort of adjusting it. But yeah, I'll see how it does in here. All right guys, my microphone temporarily cut out here, so I'm doing a voiceover for this part. So I have this Anthurium crystallinum and I need to repot it because it's been getting edema, and I've had it in this terracotta pot. But the mix, I used a regular aroid mix, and I think I just added a little too much potting soil in that particular recipe when I potted this up originally. So I'm actually going to change this out. We're going to check out the roots and see exactly what's going on in here. And when I unpotted this, you could see the really large roots all around the outer edge, but in the center it was super dense, and all that fine potting soil had kind of gathered together there, and it just was not allowing any oxygen flow. One of the main reasons that plants can end up getting edema is due to an imbalance in the oxygen flow happening at the roots. So that can be caused by too much water in the soil, so it's just oversaturated, and that could mean that the soil that it's potted in is just too dense and it's blocking oxygen flow to the roots, as well as holding on to too much moisture at the same time. Anthuriums just really thrive with a balance of water flow and oxygen flow. When they're in balance, the plant is happy, and if there's an imbalance, then you can end up with edema and spots on the leaves, you know, fungus and bacteria problems. So with a lot of anthuriums, their roots will get even more chunky with the more oxygen they get. So it's like they're being fed. They want that oxygen, they want the moisture too, but they've got to have access to air, which is super important for them. So in the back here, you can see these are the roots that were actually growing down into the cocoa husk. And look how fresh and chunky and pink and white those are. I mean, they're like absolutely gorgeous roots and so healthy and fat. So when you come across really happy roots, then you can look at what they were growing in and kind of break that down. So when you're feeling the cocoa husk, you can get down in there and you can feel what the roots were feeling. You know, I just poke my fingers down in that fiber. It's super airy, very rough and fibrous, so they can grip, but they can also get a ton of air, but it holds on to moisture too. I'm gonna experiment, and I'm gonna keep growing this one in the terracotta pot. I'm just gonna change the soil that it was in from before, and I want to see if that has an effect on the rest of the roots. The back of the roots where it was grown into the cocoa fiber pole, you know, the cocoa totem, those look awesome, and then the roots that were out here along the outer edge, those look good too. It's the rest of the roots here are a little bit weak, and I just want to see how those are going to do if I change out the soil and make it something that's more grippy for them. We're going to just totally open up that center there, and it's going to be very airy down in the center, just like it will be around the outer edge. My goal with changing that soil out is now that I can water it more freely, because before, man, it was like every time I water it, I had to be so careful because it would get the edema on the back of the leaves. Yeah, we don't want that. So, okay, I'm just checking the undersides of the leaves, making sure people are looking good. All right, I got some fresh sphagnum moss here. We'll just add that to the top, because places right like this, there is a naked root, a little naked pink root right out on top of the soil there. All right, so we've got a beautiful little top dressing of sphagnum moss. All right, I've got my watering can here, and I just added a drop of Super Thrive, and I use a little eyedropper, so I just take that little dropper out, scoop up a little, and add 1 drop in there. I've got my distilled water in here, so I'm giving it a deep watering, just letting it drain through the pot, at least the first time. And then when I go to water it like on a regular basis, I don't like totally soak the pot. I just, you know, add a decent amount of water until it starts to come through the bottom, and then I stop. So that drained through really fast, and I'm hoping that there's enough moisture that's going to be able to be held in there, and I will definitely know right away. Like, these plants let you know, and it just takes, you know, a little bit of time learning how to read them, their reactions. But yeah, if you see something like this, that is not fungus or anything, that is just dehydration. So the plant was left dry for too long. So yeah, that is all from dehydration, and that's the newest leaf there. All right, let me pull back here and I'll show you guys both of the plants. So this is the one we just repotted in the terracotta, and then next to it is the one in the self-watering pot. And it's got more leaves that are facing that direction. But look at this. It's putting out multiple leaves at the same time. Like, there's 1, 2, 3. All that new growth has only happened since I repotted it into the self-watering pod. But I messed up, and I think I put too much tree fern in because the plant is getting edema. So yeah, that's the only thing, is it is not getting enough airflow and it's getting edema. So it's staying too moist now. So I decided I'm not going to change out the soil quite yet because it has all that new growth. I'm just going to let that growth continue on. And what I'll do is not refill the reservoir. I wasn't sure how the wicking would work on these in a really chunky mix, but apparently it soaks up a lot of moisture with that little cotton wick, and so I just need to adjust my soil mix to really fit these type of pots, I think. So both the crystallinums, I'm just gonna grow them in these 2 different types of pots and see how they do. Okay, so we've got the fibrosum. It has been hiding out in the perlite here. So I'm gonna take one of my cups that has the holes in it and scoop up some damp perlite. And so I'm gonna start this out in the perlite because I want it to grow more roots, and I wanna be able to keep an eye on them and make sure nothing goes wrong. All right, let's backfill that. Yeah, I'm really hoping that this fibrosum pulls through, because I really wanted a fuzzy petiole plant, and this is the only one that I've ever tried to grow so far. Okay, just give that a tap and let that kind of settle. Okay, I've got the water with a little bit of Super Thrive. So just about 1 inch of water, so it went up to about there with the reservoir. So that's just short of where any of the roots or stem would be, because that's up here. Okay, there's another one done. I'm hoping that that little baby pulls through, because I love that stem so much, and the leaf would have been beautiful too. When I started to see that unfurl, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a perfect heart shape, so beautiful. Okay, who's next? Who wants to go next? We've got a monstera here. This one has been waiting to get out of water. I know it wants to get out of water. I can feel it when I walk by it in the plant room. It is not pleased about still being in water. It's been in here for like, I don't know, 2 months or something. So for the monstera, I'm thinking I'm just gonna put it in a full-size pot, because I'm gonna use a cocoa pole. And, oh wait, here, let's put some screen in the bottom. And then the pole, and I'm just gonna use one of the small 2-footers. And I'm using the same kind of soil mix, except I did add a little bit more tree fern and some cocoa fiber husk. Otherwise, everything else is the same. So the horticultural charcoal, the coarse pumice, the bark, and worm castings. So pretty similar to what we've been using. I just changed it up a little bit for each plant, just depending on what that particular plant, you know, seems to respond well to. All right, so that's the crazy looking root system that we're working with there. So I'm gonna pot it kind of deep, and I'm okay, whoops, I'm okay if I lose the lower leaf. So I'm gonna pot it up to this node right here. So most of those roots, I want those down in the soil. I want as many nodes as possible down under the soil, because I want it to be a real strong root system. And if I lose that lower leaf, that is no problem, because I'm sure it will be putting out more pretty soon. These two little leaves are gonna look absurd in this large pot with a tall moss pole like this, but eventually it's gonna start climbing and I just want it to be ready to go. So I've tried potting up plants too many times where I'm like, oh, it's a little baby, it'll take a while before it actually starts trying to, you know, vine. No. A lot of times they start vining as soon as they can. Okay, that little thing has been a propagation for so long, but now it's officially a new plant in the plant room. So I'm gonna take this to the kitchen, water it in with a drop of Super Thrive and put it in the plant room. All right, guys, I want to insert the clip of how the edema looks in the mornings. Is usually when it's going on. So here's the brand new leaf of this crystallinum. You can see all that water retention in the leaves. That can become an issue and that can end up damaging the leaf margin. Can you see that water retention around the edge? Actually, if I hold my hand in front, you can see it a little bit better, maybe. So all of that water retention, that can become a real problem. In fact, let's see if we can catch it on this leaf down here. So guttation in plants is normal, but the edema is where there's too much water to the roots, and it can get into the leaves and end up bursting cells and causing damage to the leaf. So if we're looking at actual water retention in the leaf, you can normally see it from the backside. And down here at the tip, now we're looking at that same leaf from the front, and if you look down here around the edge here, that's that yellow spot we were just looking at from the back with the edema. So you can see what that looks like. So that's not a humidity issue when you see that going on. And if you're curious, like what type of yellow spots your Anthurium have, check the back of the leaf and just make sure that it doesn't have that edema going on. Look at all of that. So I have this in the self-watering pot, right? And so that is what's going on there. And I've since let this go dry because well, actually there's a tiny bit of water in there still, but I'm not refilling it. I'm just giving it a break in between and seeing if that can help. But yeah, I made this mix as light and chunky as I thought it was when I put it in here. I think I just added a little too much moisture retention ingredients. So I probably put in a little too much of the tree fern. You can see how chunky that is. Like, there is no actual soil in here. There's tree fern, there's cocoa husk, there's horticultural charcoal, there's the coarse pumice, there's a lot of bark in here, and there is a little bit of worm castings. So even though it's in a really chunky mix, the edema can happen just because of the type of pot that it's potted into, right? I figured since we're in the plant room, I want to show you another example of edema damage to the leaves. So that is what it looks like on the black velvet, alocasia black velvet. And then here's the underneath side of that leaf, and that's the edema damage there. And so basically there's just so much water retention in the leaf that it causes the cellular structures, the walls of the cells, to basically burst. So I noticed the black velvet alocasia is very prone to that. It's very sensitive to being overwatered. And I don't know if it would be interesting for you guys if I just went around and showed you different leaf damage and explained what it was and how to fix it. I don't know if that's something that's interesting to you guys or not, but I could definitely do that. It helps, I think, to see problems, because then it can help you if something comes along your way, you know? Like this plant right here, this crystallinum, I had it in a terracotta pot. It was perfectly fine, but I wanted to try something where it would be holding on to water a little bit longer and I wouldn't have to water it quite so often. So I repotted it into a plastic pot, not a self-watering pot, just a regular plastic pot. And it's in a very chunky mix. This is not from acclimation. This is not from a humidity issue. This is just from edema. Okay, so you can see around the leaf margin and then up there. And from edema and excess guttation, excess water retention in the leaves, that can all cause more fungal growth or bacteria growth even to come about, and then the plant can end up with an infection. So that's why we really want to take good care if we notice something to try to handle it as early on as possible. So back here on the shelves are where I have some of the plants that I just potted up. I've got some other projects up here also, like this Philodendron, Anthurium Philodendron. This was a little baby, and so I have that one just growing in pumice, and there's a little bit of water down in the very bottom. I should probably add a little bit more water in there. The other leaves are all beat up because that's how it came in the import, but it just put out this brand new beautiful leaf. Such a cute little baby. And so this is where I'm keeping the queen. So we're under my Farmer 2000 Grow Light. And so that one will be living up here along with its little friend, the fibrosum. My goodness gracious, look at that stem. That is something spectacular. I mean, who knew? Who knew that plants that fuzzy existed? So I'm really hoping that that one pulls through because I would love to have that plant. So hopefully it makes it. Let's see, the queens, we're gonna talk about those in a separate video. Up here I have baby Anthuriums. We're not gonna talk about those in this video either because that's another video coming up. I've already filmed like a bunch of videos. I'm just doing updates on them, so it takes me a while to get some of the content out. I wanna do some more videos though. I'd like to do at least like 3 videos a week. Now see, here's a Alocasia frydek or Alocasia mictolitziana. And I love that thing. And so I can grow that one, but for some reason, the black velvet, I just like struggle with. For some reason, I don't get it. But you know what? Now that I'm looking at this one, the leaves of it, it really reminds me of some kind of Anthurium, you know? So maybe it requires care that's more like an Anthurium or something. I don't know. I mean, that one's got a lot of leaves on it. I mean, it's got an old leaf down there that's drying up. But it's got a brand new leaf that's coming in. Let's see if I come back over here. There it is. Oops, down there. There it is, a new little leaf gonna be coming in. It does have some old spider mite damage somewhere here. Oh yeah, on this leaf, right at the tips there. So that is spider mite damage. And, oh yeah, down on the edge. But I've treated it and they haven't been back. All the new growth that comes in is looking good. So no sign of spider mites on any of the new leaves. And it's sitting right between 2 philodendrons. I got postazanum on that side and ploumanii on that side. Wow, that leaf is really looking striking. My goodness. That's a newer leaf. And then it's got this new leaf here. I think I was underwatering it a little bit when that leaf was coming out though. I'm not sure how that one's going to turn out. It looks a little bit wrinkly, but I'm going to be repotting that one pretty soon too. That's going to be another video coming up, and I've got the 2 pots down there waiting for actually both of these guys. So those are going to get repotted in those longer rectangle pots. I do have some other plants that need help, and this is one of them. This is the Philodendron melanochrysum. So I was going to try to get that one done in this video too, but couldn't get to it. So maybe, I don't know, if you guys want to see more plant problem videos, let me know. I'm always working on something, and I've got to do a propagation video too, because I've got some problems going on too here, and they need some help. Look at this one, looks like a little beverage back here with a little straw sticking in there. Oh yeah, including this vanilla that is climbing up my wall here. That vanilla vine, I'm gonna have to remove it because it's got little roots grabbing onto my wall and it's getting too close to the light though. Oops, sorry, the zebrina is sitting up here because I had to move that off the ground for a minute. That is a vanilla vine growing up my back wall there, and I have to get that repotted and onto a stake. I have a couple of pots of micans that I want to pot together and put on a pole, so I think that will be an upcoming video also. But yeah, I've got more work to do, more organizing in the plant room, and things are just starting to get prepared for winter time. So that's kind of my goal, to get everything done before that. All right guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. I'm gonna get started on that right after this one. So I'm gonna start editing this video and then we're off to the next. All right, love you guys, bye.